So good afternoon and welcome to IvyLearn Instructor Workflows, Communication Tools. My name is Kathy Long. I'm the Senior Training Specialist for Ivy Tech Community College and the Center for Instructional Technology. Today we're going to enter into our instructor workflows. So in the past webinar series we've been talking a lot about buttonology and how to add content, and today we're really going to talk about how we can use these tools that we've been learning about to actually teach our courses and communicate with our students. So let's go ahead and jump right in and go right into our IvyLearn platform. Remember, when you log into IvyLearn for the first time, ivylearn.ivytech.edu, you're going to use your Ivy Tech credentials. Those are the same credentials you use when you access the My Ivy, formerly known as Campus Connect information portal. So by default, we know that IvyLearn opens up to our dashboard. And communication really starts before we even have our first student in our class. Okay, so we want to make sure in the IvyLearn platform we have a lot of different resources, and I'm really excited to say we have not only ways to communicate, but multiple ways for students and faculty to customize how they receive that information and how they receive that communication. It's very, very flexible, and the first thing that we're going to do as a faculty member and as a student and as support staff is we're going to set up our user profile. Okay, and this is now part of our policy. And then we want to make sure that we understand how to do that and also how students can learn how to do that as well. So the first thing we're going to do, probably during non-instructional week or right now, anytime you can access the IvyLearn profile or IvyLearn platform, we want to make sure that you're setting up your user profile. Your user profile is located here on your global navigation toolbar under Account. Now this becomes important because what it does, it allows you to post something about yourself and also a picture. So there's all kinds of research available to us that lets us know that building that connection with students helps build retention. And part of that is making this technology environment more friendly. By adding your picture, it allows the student to make a connection with you, and instead of being this faceless, anonymous entity out there in cyber world, you actually become a human being, and it helps build that retention and that connection with your students. When we set up our account user profile, this will actually, our picture and our information will transpose through several different areas throughout the IvyLearn platform. So anytime we post an announcement in our course, anytime we participate in a discussion board or a chat feature, our picture and image will appear. Again, building that retention and making us a human being instead of just this faceless, anonymous person. So I'm going to go ahead and just real quickly click on our account settings. Okay, and how you set up your profile is to click the profile button. There are very specific instructions on how to do this located in that handout on your GoToWebinar control panel. So here you see that I've added my picture. To change the picture, you just click this edit button. You can take the picture from your webcam. You can also upload something if you already have a picture available to you. Over here there's an edit button, so if I ever want to edit my profile, edit my biography or any links, I can do that all located here. Okay, so this is the number thing we want to make sure that we're doing as instructors, support staff, and as students. So as an instructor, you're going to go in here, you're going to set up your profile. Hopefully most of you have already done that. And in addition to that, we want to make sure that we encourage our students to do that. So maybe that's something we'll communicate to them during that first welcome announcement to our students. Okay, so by policy, we all are required to update our user settings. Okay. So this is how we do that under Account and Profile. Another key thing in our communication tools and how we're going to communicate with students is this wonderful new thing called notifications. And to set up our notification preferences, that's also located here under our Account button. And if we scroll down here just a little bit, you'll see that there's the notifications right here. Before we set up notifications, we have to set our settings preferences. Okay, and you just go through step by step. And again, most of you, I see a lot of familiar names in here, have went through this process with me before. And on that handout, if you forget how to set your settings, there is instructions on how to do so. And we also have previously recorded webinars available for you to review on our Ivy Tech Learning, Ivy Tech statewide training page. Okay, so once we set up our preferences and edit our settings, we go into notifications. This is something that we're also going to encourage our students to do, because not only can we individually set up what we as instructors want to be notified about, so can students. And this whole thing is based on good communication and staying in touch with our students. So as a student or a faculty member, I can decide not only what I want to be notified about, so any changes to content, anytime since anyone sends me a message, if there's a calendar due date change, I can let the system know that I want to be notified about that. And I can also determine how I want to be notified. So I can be notified through my Ivy Tech email address. I can set up my Gmail account to also receive a notification. I can set this up on my mobile device. And I can also set up my own personal text message. Now, when I set up these personal accounts and these settings, this is personal information. This is never published out to the student. Okay, so you'll see here that I have multiple ways to be notified. This is going to be the same thing for our students. Okay, and again, my cell phone number is still very private. I have not published this out to the students, but I might want to receive text message information if someone has sent me a message within the IvyLearn platform. So as a faculty member, you're going to go through each one of these course activities and you're going to set your preferences. Now you'll spend a little time on this. By default, you will be notified about every single one of these activities, and it scrolls down throughout the page. So scroll, scroll, scroll. Okay, discussions, conversations, scheduling, groups, okay? Now, by default, you will be notified at the very minimum through your Ivy Tech email account about all of these items and right away, okay? So you're going to want to spend some time thinking about, do I want to be notified about all of these things right away? Do I want a daily summary? Do I want a weekly summary? Or do I not want to be notified at all? And this is going to vary by your teaching style, and it's going to vary also for students. So students might very well want to know if my instructor has changed a due date. But you are the instructor, so you might not necessarily need to know if a due date has been changed because you're the one in control of that. However, if a student has posted a discussion board post or if they've sent you a message through conversations, and remember, conversations is a new IvyLearn vocabulary word. It's equal to messages in Blackboard, okay? But you might be notified about something like that. So you just want to kind of think about, what is it I want to be notified about and how do I want to be notified? This is very, very flexible. It really helps both you and your students stay on track with what's going on in the classes, especially if you're teaching multiple sections, or as a student if you're taking multiple classes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our communication tools, as our user profile. We're also going to set up this notification preferences. That is a policy request that the college has established for us. Okay. Are there any questions about the user profile or notifications? Okay, so Marian has a question. What is the difference between added to conversation and conversation messages? So let's go here. Okay, so if you're added to a conversation, that means that maybe I'm going to use my friend Julia Stump, who's on the call with us today. Julia is an OTC from our Columbus region. So Julia and I might be having a conference. We might be discussing an issue, and we might want to bring you into the conversation. So Marian, I might send you an invitation to join our conversation. Okay, so very much like a text message. Sometimes you might be having a conversation with someone and you add someone else to that conversation. That's that notification. So you've been added as a participant in that particular conversation. A conversation message is where someone has actually sent you specifically a message. So that's kind of the difference. Added to a conversation, someone's invited you to join an ongoing conversation that's already been started. And if someone sends a conversation message, that's something that someone has sent specifically to you. I hope that makes sense. All right, great. Thank you, Marion. So here's our notifications. So our work, communication tool-wise, and as an instructor workflow, we get started before the class even starts by setting up our account user profile and our notifications. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do as an instructor to prepare for courses before they even begin is we're going to set up our assignment due dates. Okay. Everything in the IvyLearn platform is deadline driven. Okay. This is a different workflow for us in the IvyLearn platform versus Blackboard. So by default, IvyLearn always opens up to this dashboard. Okay, so you remember the dashboard is how we access our courses. And over here on the right-hand side, this is our sidebar information. And what it does, it allows us as a student, as a faculty member, or even as staff to see a to-do list. And this to-do list is generated by due date. Okay, so the students are going to see what information, what tasks they have to complete right now. It also helps us as instructors to know what's going on in our classes and what to expect. Okay, so this is really a powerful tool. Students can access the assignments through this to-do list. They can access these assignments through the calendar. So the calendar is a global tool. This is also a great communication tool and feature in IvyLearn platform. So everything is very specifically deadline driven. It also drives how things are viewed in the Grade Center. So your due dates are going to be something that you're going to be very conscious of, and you're going to be using those due dates in everything that you do when you're teaching in the IvyLearn platform. And really, that is something, regardless if you're teaching online or in a traditional class or even in a hybrid course, we're going to still use those due dates as much as possible. Okay? All right, so there are several ways that we can actually change the due dates. We can go to the calendar feature right here on the global navigation toolbar. Okay, and I can highlight a particular item. I can edit that item, and I can change my due date here. Okay, and I click Submit. It's now moved that due date to a different item on my calendar. It automatically updates that item's due date in my course as well. Okay, so it's one-stop shopping. You can get there many different ways. So again, I can set that due date actually in my course, or I can do it from my calendar feature. I can also set those due dates when I actually create the content in my course. However, if I'm going to continue to use this course over and over again, I'm going to get into the habit of changing those due dates and checking those due dates for my students for every semester. Okay, so let's go into the actual course and I'll show you how you can update it from that perspective as well. So I'm going to click my dashboard link, and I'm going to go ahead and go into my demo database server course. I'm now going to go again I can go into the module. So remember, based on our statewide template, we have set up, based on Quality Matters, a statewide template that allows students to go through content in a sequential manner. And I can actually go through each one of these items. So for example, here's my discussion board introduction. I can click on the link here, or I can click on the settings to click edit. or I can click on the introduction itself. And as I scroll down, I can click the edit button and change my due date here. And click Save. So I can go through the module, I can go through the calendar, and I can also change my due dates. This automatically filters through all the systems. So the to-do list, the to-do list, excuse me, wow, I can't get that out, will change automatically. It changes it on the calendar, and it changes it within my module. Okay, so we're going to be very careful as instructors to make sure that we're setting up those due dates. The due dates that we establish here also filter into the syllabus tool. Okay, so when we go to the syllabus tool, remember this is both a content area and a functioning tool. So the first part of the syllabus is all content. This is our contact information. This is all of our support services, the textbook, the core objectives, that type of thing. We'll talk more about the syllabus in just a moment. But also there's a course summary, and this automatically populates with all of your assignments based on due dates. Okay, so this is another place you could actually change the due dates on your assignments as well. You just need to find the area that works best for you. Okay. The course summary automatically populates with all the course due dates, and students can see these due dates, and they can also access their assignments from the syllabus tool. Okay. I also want to show you that these due dates influence the Grade Center. So when I go into the Grade Center, go back up here, scroll back up, I'm going to click on Grades. And remember, when I click on the Grades button, this is how students and faculty both access the Grade Center. As a student, when I click Grades, I only see my individual grades. When I'm an instructor, I will see the entire Grade Center. I can organize my grade center by category or by due date. So again, our due dates become a very important communication tool that we have to use as instructors and we need to be aware of. So over here on the right-hand side under the settings area, when I click the settings button, I can arrange my columns by assignment group, and you'll see that here's all they are, all the discussion boards are listed first. I can also go right back into that settings button and arrange columns by due date, which is a little bit more logical, just because if we're going through those course modules, then it's more sequential. Okay, so I'll see everything in Module 1 first based on my due dates. Okay, so due dates are very, very important. Marion also had the question, is there a place on IvyLearn to go for the total points in the course? And that's also available here in our Grade Center. I believe, Marion, if I go all the way across here to the total points, here's my total. I can move that to the front as well. So there are ways to find that as well. And it's in the Grade Center. Okay, so we know as a faculty member we're going to set up our username and profile. We're going to set up our notifications. And we're also going to set our due dates. Oh, Julia has a great question. Does the due date arrangement affect how the students view the grades? Are we changing the view for the student when we change that for ourselves? And I believe so. Let's go ahead and go into, when I look at it as an individual view, this is also how I can view the grading history. I can see the student names and I can do a little bit more download information here. But if I go into my student view, excuse me, let me go down here to settings. And go into student view. And you'll know you're in student view because there's this big pink bar that comes across the bottom of the page. As an instructor, this is going to be your best friend too, so really pay attention to go into that settings and into that student view, because one of the things that we need to remember that we're going to do in our IvyLearn platform is we want to make sure that we're publishing our content. So we're doing all this information about how we communicate with our students, but if we don't make it available to students, they're not going to be able to see it. So make sure that you're publishing it, and the student view will help you to make sure that the content is actually there. So from the student view, when I click on grades, you'll see that right now this is done by category, and the student can select how they want to view their grades. So right now this student is looking at it by assignment group, but they can also look at it by module or due date. So the student still has their preferences available to them in the student view. Okay? So when they click on grades, this is what it looks like for a student. They can print their grades out if they need to. You can see how the assignments are weighted, and the student can organize this content the way that's best for them. So a little flexibility and customization on the individual level. Okay, so let's leave our student view. Okay. So another policy requirement for us as instructors is that we need to make sure that we're posting our contact information. Okay? We want students to be able to locate us, and we also want to tell them how we prefer to be communicated with. So by default, there's no longer a menu item that says contact information. The contact information is now located under our syllabus document. So when I click on syllabus, you'll now see that here's my instructor information. So I'm going to add my contact information. Here's my supervisor information. And in this particular course, I've used the statewide template. And the reason is because this allows me, instead of recreating the wheel, this allows me to use the accessibility features for our students who are using screen readers. So you'll see all these headers, how this is laid out, the formatting is set up for a screen reader, and it allows me to input the information that is required by the college that students need to know. So my contact information, the help support lines, disability support services, I can also add any regional addendums that I need to, and then of course I need to add my course outline of record as well. So I'm going to use this syllabus area to add my contact information, which is a policy requirement. So we want to make sure we're communicating that. Yes, so Sharon also pointed out to me that going back to our calendar feature, you can just drag and drop items to change the date, and that's absolutely true. So if you miss a date, you want this to be due on the first Friday instead of the last Friday, you can drag and drop those items in the grade calendar as well. You're absolutely correct. And all of those instructions are also located on your handout. It does get a little bit more difficult if I'm going from semester to semester and I want to drag that item to 2 or 3 months in advance in the future. But yes, drag and drop is a feature in the calendar that makes it really easy to change those due dates. Great point. Thank you, Sharon. Okay. So here's how we would add our contact information. And again, everything in the IvyLearn platform, when you're in the instructor view, you'll see this little pencil icon and edit. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're communicating our contact information for our students. All right, so another communication tool is the announcement page. Okay, so when I create an announcement, this is no longer just a text-based static piece of information. This is now an interactive tool in the IvyLearn platform. So what I might want to do is, as an instructor in any delivery format, whether that's online, traditional, or hybrid, I might want to create a welcome announcement prior to the start of the class. So I'm going to click plus announcement, and it opens up this content area. I give it a title. So welcome to my class. Okay. I'm going to enter in some information. So I would type out my welcome announcement. And I might use this announcement tool to let students know how I'm going to be using the IvyLearn platform for my class. So in online learning, we have very specific instructions on how the course is going to be used, how to navigate through the course. So that's a different set of instructions. But if I'm teaching in a traditional or a hybrid classroom, I might want to outlay that for my students right here in the very beginning with an announcement page. Okay, so I might tell them we're going to use IvyLearn to submit all of our assignments. You're going to access this for due dates, and however you're going to be using the tool. The announcement page is very much like if you are in a traditional or hybrid classroom. When you stand in front of your classroom, this is what's going to go on today. Don't forget we have a field trip coming up, or we have a test coming up, and just kind of those course announcements, class announcements are used here in the announcement tool. The nice thing about the announcement tool now is that you can actually have students respond back to you. So in any format, I might just set up a study session. So maybe I'm going to set it up for the first exam. And I might just say, would you prefer to meet in the morning or evening? Okay. I can now click the Save button. And when I do that, now it becomes interactive. So I can actually prompt my students to respond back. And they can tell me with the reply button when they're available. And this might help me as an instructor decide when I'm going to set up a synchronous meeting time. Okay, so that announcement tool is going to be used throughout the entire semester, just keeping students on track with what's going on in the course, what they might be studying or expecting that week, and of course a welcome announcement to let them know how you're going to be using the IvyLearn platform in your particular course. So Margie asked the question, will there be a set welcome announcement from central office that we can use as there was in Blackboard? In our online courses, if there's a course from our statewide library of online courses, typically those do have a welcome announcement built in that you can customize for your own use. So I don't see any changes in that particular area. James, that's a great question. When you hit save, does it instantly post out to students? Yes, it does. Okay, so it immediately becomes available. Now, if the students have selected in their notification preferences to be notified immediately that there's been a new announcement, they would get pinged. So they would either get an email or a text message or be notified that we just posted a new announcement. If you have selected as an instructor to be notified if someone responds to your announcement, you too would get a notification that you just someone posted something to the announcement or replied to an announcement. So it's very instantaneous. This really, I think, allows for a lot of learning styles and a lot of teaching styles. So not only do I have multiple ways that I can communicate with students, but I also have a great way to now be able to receive that communication in a manner that's best for my learning style. So Carol has a great question. Can I delay the announcement? And yes, you can. So when I click, let's go ahead and create a new announcement here. When I click Add Announcement, you'll see right down here I can delay the posting. So when I click Delay Posting, I can select the date that I want that to be posted. So a lot of our instructors, and I'm glad you mentioned this, Carol, will go ahead and set up like maybe 16 weeks of weekly announcements. So this week we're going to be covering these learning objectives. We'll be preparing for next week's exam. And you go ahead and create those kind of stock announcements for each one of your class sessions, or in this case, our course modules. And you can delay the posting. And again, this would be a great way that you could use your calendaring system to set those announcements up. So that's a great question. Yes, you can delay the announcements by using this tool, delay posting. The nice thing too about the announcement page, if you want to prompt students, it's kind of similar to how we use a discussion board, but say you want to prompt students into thinking about an idea. Maybe you have a research topic, or you're going to have students do some kind of diversity project, whatever it might be. You can also select in the announcement tool this little option here, users must post before seeing replies. So we all know sometimes when we use a discussion board or we ask a student a question, we have those students who kind of lurk in the background, see what the other students are going to say, and then maybe model their answer based on what the other students are saying. In this particular case, and that gives a really powerful tool for our faculty, we can actually make the user, our students, post a response before they can see other student responses. So if I want people to really think about, what would be a great diversity project? How would you answer this question? Or what would you like to do for your diversity project? You can actually have the students post that first, and then they can see what other students have said as well. So it's a great way to encourage individual creative and critical thinking skills. Okay. And of course, anytime I add an announcement or any content, I always click the Save button. Okay. So when I go to the home page as well, so when students first log in, they go to this home page. You will notice that the announcements are automatically at the very top of the page, so students can always see those announcements. Okay. So that's one communication tool. We also have several ways that we can personally communicate with students or multiple students at one time. We have this thing called conversations. Conversations is what replaces messages. So messages is an internal tool that was used in Blackboard. In this case, we're going to use conversations to communicate with our students. Yes, you can still use IvyTech email. IvyTech email does not exist within this IvyLearn platform. You would have to go to My Ivy, log in, and access your Outlook, My Ivy account, or if you're a full-time faculty or staff member, go to your Microsoft Outlook and access your IvyTech account that way. Conversations is the messaging, and this is the preferred communication method within the IvyLearn platform. So let me again show you how that kind of works. We're going to go into the calendar on the global menu. So you'll notice that I have 12 new messages that I have not looked at. When I click on Inbox, these are my conversations. Okay, these are my messages. And again, this is a new IvyLearn vocabulary term called conversations. I can look at my conversations for all the courses I'm enrolled in, or I can look at it from one specific course. If it has the little dot, the black dot, this means it's a new message. I can also see that there have been 3 people communicating in this particular conversation. There's a menu button here for the inbox. I can look at the unread messages only. I can look at my sent messages. I can look at archived, very similar to any type of communication tool. I can also compose a new message here. When I click Compose New Message, again, that's that pencil icon. It's universal throughout the IvyLearn platform, letting you know this is how you edit, customize, or create content. I can select the course that I want to communicate with. I can type in the person's name. And it will automatically populate here. You can see it's kerchunking. Or I can select the people field, this little people icon. And it'll give me a list of students in my course. Okay. Now the nice thing about this conversation tool, and this is the best example I can use of this, so when I'm teaching a class, Sometimes I'll have a student, several students who haven't, if I'm in the online environment, several students who haven't logged in, and I'm getting ready to do the no-show withdrawal process. Okay, so this might be a case where I would want to send out, 3 or 4 people, hey, I noticed you haven't logged into my class. I also have scenarios when I'm teaching in a traditional or hybrid section where I might have 3 or 4 students who I'm missing an assignment for, or there are 3 or 4 people who haven't attended for class and I want to give them a quick reminder. When I do this, I can select several people to communicate with. Okay. Oops. Okay. So I have Kara, Matthew, and Julia who have missing assignments. And typically in our Blackboard environment, I would never send this type of message, this very specific confidential message to 3 students at one time. But there's this great little tool in IvyLearn that allows me to send an individual message to each recipient. So I'm typing the message one time, and I would be more specific than what I'm typing in here now. Okay. I would give them my message, and when I click send, each one of these people would get this message individually. So I'm still maintaining confidentiality, but I'm writing one message without a lot of cut and pasting, and it goes to multiple students at one time. Okay. I click send. Okay. So I've just sent my conversation, also known as messages. Okay. Now, based on how the student has set up their notifications, they could immediately get notified that I've just sent them a message. Okay, so again, very powerful, one central location of where I'm sending a message out to my students, and they receive that notification how they prefer to, whether that's through email, text messaging, on their mobile device. And even if they don't select those notifications, they say, I don't want to be notified, when they log into the IvyLearn platform, they're going to see right here on their inbox that they have 12 new messages or new messages located here. Okay, so this is the conversations tool. Again, to access conversations, this is how we message our students, this is how we communicate our students either through a group or as an individual. This is how they might also communicate with me. This is a tool that's used by both faculty, students, and staff. Okay, so I access inbox. I can select all courses or an individual course, and I can compose by just clicking this icon, and this is how I start my conversation. Okay, so Sharon asked the question, in Blackboard we were able to create folders in the Message Center for each course. Is there a way to do this in Canvas? It's really more of a filtering system. So if I go to all courses, I can select by each individual course. Okay, I can also archive or star my messages. So when I looked up starred conversations, I can filter it that way. So we're not actually creating folders, but there's a way to filter down to very specific information. I can also search. And I can search for any communication that I've had with Kara. And you'll see that Kara and I have communicated here. So you can search by student as a way of filtering. You can search by course. You can search by starred. You can search by sent items. And again, I can see all the messages I've sent, or I can see it by course. So just a different workflow, but not too difficult to manage, I don't think. Okay. So that's one way that we can personally communicate with our students, either individually or as a group. I want to go back into the actual course. Okay. Another way that we can communicate with students is through the discussions. Okay. So in an online course specifically, we use the discussion boards a lot. Okay, so the first discussion board in an online course is usually the introduction. So there's an introduction discussion board where students introduce themselves to other people in the class. Discussion boards are also a great way to apply critical thinking skills. So you can post a case study and then ask the student what process would they use to answer that question. The fire science people, for example, they have a website that actually talks about multiple fires, the resources used to fight that fire, if they've had to call in additional resources from other counties. So the fire science department, for example, uses the discussion board both in their online, hybrid, and traditional classes to have everyone participate. Okay, so in a traditional classroom, you might have one or two people who really dominate the conversation, or you have people who are very uncomfortable speaking in public. A discussion board allows every single student to participate in that discussion board and to state their opinion or use their critical thinking skills. As an instructor, this is a great way to teach. The discussion board area is a learning opportunity. So instructors are encouraged to participate in this discussion board, to apply what they learn. Every one of our instructors are experts in their field, so this is a great way to facilitate a conversation and then also apply something. So in our example with our fire science people, we have firemen who are teaching those courses, and they can draw on their personal experience. So maybe they worked for a volunteer fire department and they had a hazmat situation. They can actually communicate with those firemen and said, we had very limited resources, so we had to call such and such and such and such and such and such people, and this is how we were able to service our community. So it's a really great learning tool, a way for you to share your experiences and how to give real life examples to these discussion board areas. They're very simple to use. You post the question. You want to make sure that any discussion board question isn't a yes or no, but something that really facilitates a conversation. Typically, we have students post one original thought and then interact with at least two of their peers. So those are discussion boards and a way to interact with that. Does anyone have any questions about the discussion board or how those are used? It's a very powerful communication tool, typically used in our online environment, but I encourage you to use those in your other teaching formats as well, because it does really give students an ability to communicate with each other and for everyone to be able to participate. Now, one of the cool new things about IvyLearn, and I'm just going to go in here to my this introduction discussion board. Okay, when I hit reply, for example, I get this content area, and this content editor. You can do this anywhere in the grading feedback and announcements and discussion boards, but you can actually allow students to use a video camera. Okay, so I might and I'm going to pick up my camera and I'm going to give my computer permission to access my webcam. Oops, I'm not plugged in. Oh, sorry about that. So if I had my webcam plugged in, it would automatically populate, and I could actually do my introduction using a video camera and audio. Okay, so imagine how powerful that is as a student. If you're asking a question, you want them to be able to have a great debate or a discussion, this is one way you can do that. You can actually encourage students to become a little bit more vocal, and if they want to use the webcam instead of text, you can allow that. That's up to you as an instructor. But this webcam feature is available in any area from announcements to communication to discussion boards. Any content area at all is available using this video camera, as well as grading feedback. So kind of pretty cool stuff. and students can use it as well. Now, as an instructor, we want to make sure that any time that we are using video in our course, we want to make sure that we have a transcript of what we're saying or using closed captioning. So just think about that as an instructor. Anytime we use our webcam, we want to make sure that we're also going to be using some kind of transcript for our students. Okay. So Marjorie has a question. Can you put the initial posting due date on the calendar as well as the final reply due date? Yes. So in that particular case, I would do 2 dates. What Margie is asking me is in a discussion board, we typically have students post their original post by like Wednesday evening and then respond back to 2 other students by Sunday. So there's 2 different due dates. One of them, I would just put a placeholder on the calendar. So Wednesday, I would have, your original post is due, okay, with that due date, but I would not give it an assignment. I would call it an event instead of an assignment. So when I go into the calendar, for example, when I create an item, I can create an event or an assignment. When I create an event, so discussion board 1, original post. So this allows my student to see when it's due, that first initial post. Okay. I would tell it what calendar it's on, so it'll be my demo, and I'm going to click submit. Okay, so now I have this on as a placeholder for the student. It would show up on their calendar event as well, so they would see it, but as far as an assignment due date, I can only give it the assignment due date 1, so the Grade Center would only have 1 event due date. And when I would do that, I would create that as an assignment instead. Okay, so one's a placeholder, an event on the calendar, and one is an actual assignment due date. And that assignment due date would be what would be in the Grade Center and also on the actual discussion board in the course. Yes, so when you do use your webcam, does a text document need to be attached to for QM? Yes, it does come back to Quality Matters standards, but more importantly, back to our accessibility standards and making sure that we're in compliance with those rules and regulations. Yes, when you create an event, it does post to the to-do list on the sidebar. Yes, absolutely. That's a great question, Sharon. Okay. Wow, so we are running out of time, and I want to show you a little bit about the Grade Center. Okay, so when I go into my course, and we will have a whole session on the Grade Center and how that works, but I want to show you when we're talking about communication and workflows, the number one thing that students want to know is when are you going to grade my paper? When am I going to get my feedback? When are you going to get my grades? When is that? When is that? When is that? So we want to make sure that we're communicating with that. So we're going to create an announcement. I'm grading your papers. Typically, policy kind of requires us to get back with students within 7 days with our grading feedback. We want to make sure that when we are giving grading feedback that we are constructive, sensitive, and balanced. But a way to do that as well is in the Grade Center giving good student feedback. And when I click on grades, what did I do? Oh, here we go. I was in individual view. Okay. Okay. So here we are in the Grade Center. And I can do several different communication tools in the Grade Center. One, Here I am, my first homework assignment. If I use this pull-down menu in this cell, I can actually message students who, okay? So when I click on this, I can message students who haven't submitted their assignment yet. So automatically IvyLearn kind of weeds out those students who haven't turned in their assignment yet. Pretty nice, okay? So I can now send a message to all these students, and it does send them to them individually. Okay, and then I can send this message to all the students who have not submitted their homework assignment yet. When I click, I also can send a message to all those students who haven't been graded. So I know, for example, our English faculty, final projects can get very large. So if you're in the process and you say, I'm going to try to get all the projects graded in the next 7 days, okay, and you're running out of time, life happens, you're running behind, and you have several students who haven't been graded yet, I can send them a message saying, I am sorry, I have not graded your assignment yet. I hope to have it completed by Sunday. I'm a terrible typist, okay? And then I can send that message. I can also send students who scored less than. So if I have students who scored less than 5 on this assignment, I can send them a reminder. I can close that learning loop. I can send them a YouTube video, a supplemental material. I can send them directions. Please review chapter 3 because, you know, a lot of times when we're teaching, it's a foundation. So they must understand this concept before they can move on to the next. So IvyLearn is really powerful in a way that we can communicate with students who scored below a normal points or scored more than. So if you have a student who scored more than 7 or a perfect score, you can send them a quick message saying, congratulations, you did outstanding work. So that's pretty powerful, and that's right here located on the individual column. Okay. There's also this little tool I want to point out to you. You can mute the assignment, and what that means is if you are grading assignments, okay, and you are working your way through, and it's going to take you a couple days, when you mute the assignment, this, even though you've graded something, it doesn't show up to the student yet. Okay, so say you have 2 friends in your course, and one student says, oh, I got my paper back, I got a B, what did you get? And the student says, well, I didn't get my assignment back yet, I don't know what I got. Okay, to avoid that kind of communication, you can mute the assignment, okay, which just means that none of the information, none of the grading feedback goes to the student until you're ready to release it. The student does see the message that the assignment has been muted, and they know that you're in the process of grading it. Okay, so that's mute the assignment, and here's a little message on what that means. Okay, so that's muting your assignment. You can also give individual student feedback. So for example, you'll notice when I place my cursor in one of these corners, this little thought bubble pops up in the right hand side. Okay, so I'm going to click this little thought bubble. I can give a grade, and I can add a comment. Okay, and I can post my comment to the student. Okay, and if you notice when I do that, it automatically, there's my user profile again. My picture, I'm making that connection. I'm not just some nameless person who's asking this person a question. I'm a real human being and an instructor. So again, another way that I can communicate with that student. Okay, and that little thought bubble shows up here. I can also communicate with a student by clicking on their name. So when I click on their name, their little student card comes up over here. So here's my buddy, Pat Boggs. I can see the student's face. This is the course I'm in. I can see all of his grades. I can see his analytics. I can see how many times he's been late. I can see how many assignments are missing. I get a little graphic here, how much has he participated in the course, how many pages has he viewed, and I can also message him directly from my Grade Center. So I'm in the Grade Center, this little course content button pops up, I click message, and I now can send him a message here directly from the Grade Center. I would be more polite, I would add more information to that, and then I would click send message. Okay, I now have a record of that message I've sent down here in my inbox under the conversations tool. Okay, so that's where I would access this information. Again, another place to communicate with a student. I can do it directly here from the Grade Center, but to see that correspondence, I'm going to look over here in my inbox on the global navigation menu. Okay, we've had a couple of different questions pop in, so let's see if we can answer those. I think I just answered Marion's question. She wanted to know, where can I see the messages that you have sent through the Grade Center, and that's actually through our conversations area in the inbox. Margie asks, can I use a picture of the course text on the course card? Yes, that is outside of our communication tools, but if you hang on with me after the presentation, I'll be glad to show you how you can add a picture to your course card. James has a question. When grading an assignment, is there a place there that allows you to send a message to the student? And I'm sorry, James, I think I've already answered that question for you. We sure do. There's that little thought bubble here, or we can actually select the student's name and send them a message from their content card. Okay. Wow, so we've been through a lot of different things so far today and how we communicate in the instructor workflow. So we know we're going to set up our username and profile, or our profile settings, our notification settings. We're going to send that announcement, that welcome announcement. That can also be a tool that asks students to engage with us. We're going to update our contact information in the syllabus document. We're going to update our deadlines. So every assignment needs a deadline because that generates our to-do list, it generates the calendar, it generates notifications, and it also notifies us how we can arrange things in our Grade Center. So setting those due dates is probably number one thing we want to make sure we're doing as instructors in the IvyLearn platform. Okay. We've also talked about personal communication with our students can be used through our conversations tool. We also can use discussion boards, and we've talked about some grading feedback. The one area that we haven't talked about yet is synchronous sessions, which this means we put our students online with us at the exact same time. Things like GoToMeeting. So if I'm going to do some screen sharing, I want to prepare my students for an exam, or I want to do weekly sessions, I can set up a GoToMeeting. We're using GoToWebinar. It's very similar to GoToMeeting. It's designed for 25 people or less. If you've not used GoToMeeting and you want to do so in the future, you just put a help desk ticket in, we'll get you an account set up, and then we can show you how to use that. It's very simple to use. We also have this tool called Collaborations, and also in our course menu, we have the chat module that allows us to interact with students and people in the course. Okay, so you'll notice earlier I posted a message. It has a lot of emojis that you can use to communicate with your students. So it's kind of more like a instant messaging, Facebook type of thing. It's not synchronous, but you can use that to communicate with your students. It does keep a history, so all the communications in this particular course are already listed here for me. Go away, emojis. Okay. If I scroll through here, you can see this is a running conversation from everyone in the class. We also have this conferences tool. This is big blue button that's located, this is a synchronous tool located directly in our IvyLearn platform. It only allows you to keep the recordings for about 2 weeks. It's a friendly tool. It's not, we've talked about it before in some of our past webinars, but it doesn't allow you to really archive it for the long haul, where GoToMeeting allows you to do that. We also have Google Hangouts. We talked about that last week, and there's also a link on our handout page to find out how you can use Google Hangouts, which is a new synchronous tool that's available to you that replaces BBIM, which is located on the My Ivy platform. So if you log into My Ivy, you'll notice now that you actually have Google Hangouts. And this allows you to communicate synchronously through video calls or through instant messaging. Okay. So BBIM is now replaced by Google Hangouts, and you access that through the My Ivy portal. I want to be sensitive of your time, so I want to thank you all for being here. We covered a lot of conversation. Hopefully you've not only learned about some of our tools, but how you can apply those to your teaching strategies. I'll be glad to stay on the line to answer any additional questions that you might have, but if you would like to exit out of the webinar anytime, you can go to the top of your GoToWebinar control panel and click the X to exit out. Again, thank you for your time and have a great day.